Hello, so after creating our basic app and navigating through different builds and screens using the Kivy file, I want to try and create pages that you can navigate through from the app itself. And for this, you're going to use something that is the ScreenManager of Kivy. So you want to import kivy.uyx.ScreenManager and import the ScreenManager and the screen. So how is this going to work? Like everything in Kivy, the ScreenManager is a widget, and this widget is going to go into your screen. Okay, so if you have your screen here, what's going to happen is that you're going to put the ScreenManager in there, but the ScreenManager is not really a grid or any kind of widget that you actually see. It's a widget that is going to handle multiple screens, hence importing the ScreenManager and the screen here. And so what you're going to do is create one widget that is your ScreenManager, and this widget is going to have inside of it multiple screens. Okay, so it's going to have your screen 1, your screen 2, your screen 3, and more. And here inside of those are going to be layouts that you can use. Okay, and so this is how it's going to go. And so technically you're going to have this one widget in here, but what you're going to do is generate the 1 and click on a button, for example, or just come back to go to 2. This is basically how it's going to be working, meaning that from now on the classes we're going to generate for our screens are going to be screens handled by the ScreenManager. So this is where we're at with this, and let's follow on the documentation real quick so that we kind of understand what they want us to do. So the documentation tells us that what you need to do is having your Kivy file for everything else, and then create your widgets and your build app as usual. So let's start with a test app. Okay. Here, adding it as an app object with capital T. And in here, I'm going to define my build function as usual with self. Okay. And that's where we start to build our ScreenManager. So the ScreenManager is going to be an object in here, and they just call it SM and call the ScreenManager. And then inside of the ScreenManager, you're going to add various widgets, and for that we're going to create the classes, right? So as usual, we're going to make a class and maybe like the logging window, which is going to be here not a grid layout or other kind of layout. It's going to be a screen. Okay, but we're not going to put anything in there, so we're going to just pass. Then we're going to create, I don't know, a page 1, and it's also going to be a screen. I'm going to pass 2 because the Kivy file is a thing, and a class page 2, and we're going to stop there, I think. And it's going to also be empty in the Python file because I don't want to have to import all the shenanigans up there. So we're going to stick to that. So how do we tell the Kivy app that in the ScreenManager you're going to put page 1, 2, and logging? Well, you're going to simply call sm the object dot add widget with an underscore. And this add widget is going to take as an argument the function that you want to call. And this function is going to be login window. And inside of your login window, you can define the name that it has. And this name is going to allow you to navigate through your windows. So it doesn't have to be the same name as your window. It could be any kind of ID that you might use, just like you were using IDs in your Kivy file before. but it needs to be something that you remember so that you can call it easily. So for example, I would enjoy to keep the name because maybe I could use a dunder method to call the class's name, for example, in order to generate the file, and this is going to be the argument name equal logging window. Okay, and then we're going to do the same thing 3 times for our different widgets with page 1 and page 2. Page 1 and same thing. And here we're saying in the Screen Manager those widgets are there. So as usual in Kivy, you're adding things in order. Okay, first, second, and last. But it doesn't change how they're going to be handled since you're going to call them obviously one by one. And then don't forget to return your SM object from your build statement so that this is what you can see. Okay, maybe let's zoom in a little bit more. Great. Okay, we are good. So now I'm gonna add the classic if name equals main statement just to start my test app and run it. Not return, run it. Okay, but what happens if I start it now? Well, I generate everything, but I can't see it because I don't have anything, any button inside of it, and so I cannot navigate through it. And so what I need to do is, as usual, create my Kivy file or use the commands to do it in the Python file, but why bother? So we're going to go with our test.kv using the name before the app in my builder class here, in my app class, and I'm just going to define everything, right? So I'm going to define my login window, my page 1, my page 2. So let's go with that, and I'm going to say that I come into the login window first, and then I'm going to define what this login window looks like. So this is just basic and usual Kivy. So I'm just going to copy paste something I have here just to get a label and buttons. We're going to make this a grid layout. And from here I'm going to take this. Excuse me, but let's get a little fast on those things that we know now. So yeah, we get our button, but now what we want to do is navigate, right? And so to navigate, we've seen that buttons take an on press statement, which is going to say here that I want to go to a page, okay? And so don't ask me why, this is just what the documentation says. You're going to say that you're going to call from the root.manager.current. And so I guess that what that means is that you're going to call from the login window the root, which is your SM, so your screen manager. And you're going to access the screen manager's functions to say that this manager.current, so current being the screen that you're showcasing, is going to be equal to the name of your page, page 1. Okay, so keep that in mind for whatever reason. If you're working in a weird way and your screen manager is not the root of the widget you're working on, this might not be working. You have to maybe to work in another way. So here you're calling your screen manager and you're saying that the current screen is page 1. Okay, and then just to be sure that everything's working, let's create the page 1 and define it. And it's going to say page 1 is going to be a grid layout 2, and we're going to make it like the same thing. one column, a label, which is going to be page 1, and then go back, and we're just going to copy the onPress too, because I should have done that from the beginning. Okay, and so here we are. Okay, so let's try it out again. Invalid syntax, page 1, page 1, page 1, here the quote. I'm sure people saw that and were mad. Login window is wrong. What did I call it? Login window. Oh, login. Happens, right? Login. Oh yeah, of course it get there. Great. Well, I'll be keeping that because obviously I'm not almighty, I'm learning, I'm a beginner, and those things happen, and you should feel comfortable with them happening to you too, I guess. So, page 1, login page as a label, I press page 1, I go to the other page, okay? But if I press go back, nothing happens, right? So let's go here and say that we want to go back there. So what I'm gonna do is change this to login window, right? And if I go back here, I'm like, okay, login page, go to page 1, go back, login page. Did you see that? It was pretty weird and not really instinctive for you, but it's been going left all the time. Because by default, the ScreenManager is switching pages using a slide to the left animation. And this is something you can access to have lots of different animations supported by most of the structures you're going to work with, but some things are very specific to iOS from what I understand. But let's now go back to the Kivy file and change that transition. And to do that, what we're going to do is call that the root, gosh, those fat fingers of mine, .manager. Again, we're calling the same thing, but this time we're going to call the transition function, and we're going to say dot direction because we don't want to change the transition, which you could do here. We're going to change the direction of the transition, and this one is going to be going on the right, and this is a string. Okay, and now just to be sure, we're going to do that here and say that it's going to go to the left, because I want to have the feeling that I'm going back to the center of my screen so that it's very instinctive for my users. So let's go there, login page, I'm going to click go to page 1, I'm going left, and then go back, I'm going right. Easy as that, right? I don't think we really need to bother coding the page 2. I just wanted to show that it exists. But you could have a second button, like, I don't know, like, let's just do it real quick. Here, go to page 2, and it's gonna slide on the left, right? And here we're gonna copy our page 1 and we're gonna make the page 2 from it, because we're not lazy, we're efficient, right? Page 2, grid layout, page 2, go back, login, and this time we're going to slide on the right because we want things to be smooth and logical for every user that are going to connect. So going to page 1, going back, going to page 2, going back, and see that it feels like you have screens on the left and the right of your app just by doing that. So it's just as easy as this, really. So let's use what we know now and let's try to do a little change on the code we had from my previous video, where I had this. Okay, so we made this thing where we had our Johnny Bravo, the username that we could write here and send to connect as something, but we were going on and off from a login screen and multiple other screens that we were changing by hand. And so now what I want to do is, on click of this button, go to another page. Okay, so how do I transform all this? Well, sounds pretty easy now that we've done work on the first thing. So I'm gonna add my line here and say from. It's kind of important. And now what we're gonna do is maybe do it a little differently to show you. I'm gonna create a class that is going to be my class. Let's call it main window, and it's going to be a ScreenManager object. So we're going to do it differently here, and we're going to pass. Okay. So why am I doing this? I'm doing this because I want to show you that you can work differently and organize your Kivy file differently too. And so I believe that this is a little more, like a little cleaner to work with. So we're going to create the main window ScreenManager. Let's call it the window manager. Window manager. Better. Okay. And then my main box is going to be a screen. And the login screen too. And my app is not changing. It's hello app. No problem. Okay. So how does that change the way we are handling everything in the Kivy file? Well, now this is going to be the organization of our file. And we saw earlier that when you generate a ScreenManager, you want to add screens into it, and you have to use commands in your Python file. But what we also know is that Kivy files are meant to make everything more practical, especially when it's about the structure of your app. Overall, it's way easier to structure and make your app organized thanks to the Kivy file. So what we're going to do is just call the main box and the login screen in our Kivy file. So now we're going to call the window manager as the first thing, window manager. And then inside we're going to add the login screen, okay? And then the main box. Okay? And this is done. This is how we tell Kivy in Window Manager we have those two screens, okay? Everything else is the same, but for one thing, that is that now those files, those widgets don't have a layout associated to them, okay? So we need to call it in the Kivy file now. So we're gonna go in the main box and say grid layout. And we're gonna change that. Okay. Oh, it was a box layout, my bad. See, I should have done that in the other way. But the login screen's a grid layout. And we called it here correctly. So now I just did that pretty fast, but let's try it out. By adding the functions to the buttons. So we want to go from the login screen to the main box. So let's go to login screen, to the button, and we had this. Button 1 is going to send and unpressed. We're going to check out login as plus this. And so now we can do also this by saying root.manager.current equal, and then we're going to call it box layout, okay? But there's one thing missing here, is that if I call box layout or page 1, what was it? Main box, sorry. If I call it main box, this is not gonna work, okay? Why? Because this is not this, okay? What you need is, just like we did in here, I need to give a name to my object, but this time it's not going to be ID. You know what it is. It is a name that we're going to give, okay? And this name is going to be main box. Remember, it could be anything. It could be, I don't know, ruler. It could be a handstand. It would work. It's just like make it practical for you to know what you're calling, right? So it's going to be main box for me. So by pressing on the button, we're gonna go to the main box page. Okay, let's try it out and see if it works like this. So here is our Johnny Bravo. Let's call like the hello and send, and we're going there. And now we are in our previous box layout. Obviously I didn't code a way to go back with that button, so it's not doing anything. So let's do that real quick with box layout button, and we're just gonna copy because we're not lazy, we're efficient. Boom. Root manager, current equal, and then we do the same here. Name equal logging screen. Okay, and we're gonna copy it there. And to be sure, we're gonna call the root.manager.transition.direction equal right. Okay, and put it there to make it, oopsie, left. So let's try this out now. Oopsie, so where's the typo? Okay, so I checked it out and I went ahead of myself. You know, talking and going through something I just learned is kind of hard sometimes. So I made sure everything's working now. Let's go back on the mistakes just in case you're following up with the code. I had a definition of a name that had an equal sign, and this is not a Python file, so don't be like me, be careful. And I forgot the onPress statement here, meaning just going on my root manager.current, so maybe I deleted it or something, I don't know. So here I'm just calling my login screen, I'm having a transition, and next in my login screen I'm doing the same. I'm transitioning and I'm calling mainbox. Okay, so I added a name for everything here, and now we are all set. So what's gonna happen here? Well, our Johnny is here and we can log in as anything. So let's say hello, or we're gonna log in as Johnny, and we're gonna send, and then we are in our box layout, and this is the button one that's gonna bring us back there. Obviously this page didn't change, right? So we are still logged in as Johnny, meaning that this is how you could keep informations for a database or your user's ID and link it to any kind of information you need to keep about the account. Every pages are going to stay the way they are even if you load another one. Okay, and if I click on this button again, I can still go back. So those were two ways of implementing a ScreenManager using the Kivy file. Obviously you have built-in Python code to navigate through your screens. I think you can use like this switch to function for that, and go to a screen in a list, for example. So you could create a list of the name of the screens and then just switch to them. You could like change the transitions too, but I don't want to go in detail through that. This is things like once you understand the ScreenManager, you can look into those details by yourself, I believe. So yeah, I hope it can be helpful. For me it was to come back on this, and I'll try to go on some actual project now. So see you in a bit. Bye.